Hi, beautiful souls. It's Tan back here again today with you on this Astrology, Human Design, and Gene Keys channel. And today we're going to be looking at Gene Key number 11, which corresponds to Human Design Gate 11 and the zodiac sign of Sagittarius. But before we get started today, if you're not familiar with the Gene Keys or Human Design in general, I have made an introduction video to what that is, and I'll provide a link to that up above in the description box below as well. So there are 64 gene keys and they correspond to different zodiac signs, so go check that out and then you can come back and watch this video. But of course, most of you are probably have been following with this series and have been looking forward to this gene key if it shows up in your chart or your Human Design chart somewhere. So before we get started, if you are interested in a Gene Keys reading or Human Design or Astrology reading, you can head over to my website and see the services that we have available there, either from me or from one of the amazing and wonderful astrologers and Human Design guides on my team. So I'll provide a link to that as well in the description box below. All right, so let's get to today's transmission of Gene Key 11, which corresponds to the zodiac sign of Sagittarius from 2237 degrees to 2815 degrees of Sagittarius. And this gene key moves from the shadow of obscurity to the gift of idealism to the city of light. This gene key is associated with the vision key bird, the pheasant. As the life key, it is the polar bear, and the fear key, the underworld animal, is the carp. In the 64 codon ring, this gene key is located in the codon ring of light and is associated with the amino acid threonine. I'm sure I pronounced that correctly. In the 64 I Ching hexagrams, this hexagram is Earth over Heaven, Unio Mystica of heaven and earth, anchoring the light within the body to see the world as it truly is. In Human Design, this Gate 11 is located in the ajna and connects to Gate 56 in the throat via a channel called the channel of curiosity or the channel of entertainment, moving from the shadow of aimlessness to the gift of entertainment to the city of magic. All right, so as with all of my gene key videos, I like to begin by looking at the bird, the vision key bird that's associated with the gene key, to get a sense of the potentials of this gene key and its symbolism. So the bird associated with this gene key is the pheasant. The pheasant is a very colorful bird. Sometimes it even looks golden. The original name pheasant comes from the Greek word phasianos, or it actually means the Phasian bird. And Phasis is a river that flows into the Black Sea. It was recorded that they had seen numerous number of pheasants there on this river, and that's why they called this bird the Phasian bird, which has come to its modern name, the pheasant. And so there's a very interesting symbolism with the river, the flowing of the river, that we will come to later on in this video. So the pheasant is a symbol of imagination and creativity, sometimes up to the point of clairvoyance, clairaudience, and dreams, because the pheasant, as a bird, has amazing eyesight and hearing. And there's a specific breed of pheasant called the golden pheasant, which is the one that I mentioned, seems to have like almost these glowing yellow-colored skins and wattles. They can also change their colors, but they tend to do that by shedding their feathers. So these are just some of the characteristics of the pheasant. And so if you have this particular gene key in your Human Design body graph or in your gene keys profile, or maybe it's one of your angles. So if one of your angles is between, 2237 degrees of Sagittarius to 2815 degrees of Sagittarius, you will have some of these characteristics, and this will be a part of your path in this life. And for me, I have this gene key on my descendant. So I have my ascendant in gene key 12, my descendant at 26 degrees of Sagittarius. So it falls into this particular gene key. So I experienced some of these themes that I'm going to be telling you guys today, mainly through my relationships. But if you have this gene key, so some of the traits that you might have is that you are very idealistic, you are very imaginative, and you want to make the world a better place, we could even say. So you have a lot of fantasies and visions about how you could make the world a better place. Now, whether you are taking action on that or not is not indicated by this gene key alone. There is also a lot of need for travel with this gene key. It's part of the channel of curiosity. So it's curious about the world. It wants to see the world and wants to be expanded in the perspective and the viewpoint of the world. So if you have it, you are expanded in your perspective and viewpoints of the world. You can also be a little bit fanatical. We can also have the opposite end of that spectrum, which is a fanatic in terms of how you view the world and how you think people should view the world. Okay, so now we're going to look at your shadow, which for this gene key, it is the shadow of obscurity. And we want to keep in mind that the shadow exist within every gene key, within all of us. And it's a state of being when you are living in fear in your life and when your heart and your body is constricted. But it is important to embrace our shadows so that we can own up to that, can recognize that it's a part of us, and that we can turn the shadows or alchemize the shadows into our gifts. So this gene key in the shadow, this gene key in general, is associated with the human vision and the human being's ability to translate visual images, both external and internal visual images, into imagination. The way in which your brain will do that, and by the way, I have to say that this gene key is associated with the right brain, which is also considered to be the more feminine brain. The left brain is considered to be the more masculine brain because it's associated with logic and numbers and reasoning, and the left brain is associated more with chaos, imagination, and abstract thinking. So this is the right brain. This is the more feminine brain that we're talking about here. And so depending on how the human brain translates those images, it can either, in the shadow of obscurity, we have this translation becoming illusion and delusion and, of course, obscurity. Or you can also have it become imagination and creativity and idealism, depending on how the brain's functioning. So we have a little bit of like the Fool energy in the tarot card. When I think about this gene key, I feel that energy of the Fool. So without a properly functioning right brain, we can say your view of reality is going to be limited in some ways. So that's why I also mentioned that the shadow of this particular gene key can also become like narrow-mindedness or fanaticism, because it isn't able to have perception of reality of the world in any other way than whatever that's happening in the brain. So it's narrowed and it's limited in that sense. So these images that are flooded through our right brain, this feminine part of us, it's also associated with chaos because they come in and we don't have a lot of control over how they come in and what is coming in through our right brain. And so when you're in the shadow of obscurity, when you're getting these images or these intuitive channeled messages coming into your right brain, what you tend to do is you repress that. And when you repress that, it tends to, leak out in some way, shape, or form at some point in your life as like repressed desires and repressed fantasies. And then they lead to certain kinds of emotional issues, and it leads to you interacting with other people with a hidden agenda because you can't quite get a grasp on some of your ideals. So these images that are flooding to you into your right brain, they are coming from your unconscious. So it's a part of you. Whatever you're seeing in your dreams, for example, or maybe you just have visions and you just see them when you're doing things in your normal daily life, or sometimes you're daydreaming even. Guilty of that. You're like in the classroom, and you will notice this a lot, especially if you have this gene key somewhere in your chart and when you were very young, you may just daydream when you're in the classroom. And of course, when you're a child, you're kind of like maybe enjoying the daydream, or you're not really aware of like what's happening. But as an adult, these things that maybe you used to daydream when you had the chance to do it as a child, as an adult, you may not have the time to do that. So it may come out as in your dreams when you're sleeping, or just maybe when you're alone. They're just coming through from your unconscious. So it's important to remember that these flooded images, these visions that you have, they are a part of you. And these images that floods, they're merely archetypes. They're not meant to be interpreted literally. So let's say that you had dreams of, maybe it's, yes, I'm going to share with you guys a dream that I have, or a kind of dream that I have reoccurringly that is not literal, but it's an archetype. So I have dreams now and then again, pretty often, of dirty bathrooms, of like going to the bathroom and then wanting to release myself. But every cubicle, it's a public bathroom, but every cubicle that I enter, it's like dirty in some ways. It's really disgusting. So I'm not able to release. So there's, of course, going to be like a symbol behind that. There's going to be a message behind that is not meant to be literal and not meant to be suppressed, because yes, it's a bit disgusting, but it's representing a part of your subconscious or your unconscious, and there is a desire for something inside of you. Even if it is a dream about dirty bathrooms, there's a desire of something needed to be changed in your life, or something that you want to make better in your life, right? So ultimately, these archetypes, these visions that you have in your right brain, they are a part of your psyche. Oh my God, this is so funny. But okay, so what actually, the way that this repression is described by Richard Rudd is that when you repress these desires that you have inside of you, right, you end up attracting that into your life anyways, through the partners or the people that you meet. And of course, I have Gene Key 11 on my descendant, so I attract a lot of the things that I repress inside of myself. And so, okay, so I'm gonna give you a more maybe constructive example rather than that dream that I had. But I always wanted to and seek for a partner especially when I was in my 20s, when I was in my teens. I really wanted a partner who was smart, who was wise, who was even philosophical. And it was a requirement for me to be with a partner who was much smarter than me. And a large part of me was not owning up to that in myself. And I will tell you guys that I never really read a book, besides from like the normal like teenage novel. Of course, I read those, but I never really read like a book on philosophy or a book that really enhances your thinking until I was about 23 or 24 years old. And when I was around 23 or 24, I was reading a lot of philosophical books. And that changed something about my mind and the way that I think. And I'm going to say this to you, like, it's kind of embarrassing in a sense, but I appreciated that I had to go through that phase of myself. But I think before I actually turned like 23 or 24, I was actually dumb. Like, I didn't know how to think. I didn't know logical thinking or any kind of thinking in general, because I never really read. But the moment I started reading a lot more, the moment that I trained my brain to be able to think a little bit more deeper. But I was always desiring that within another person. But what I ended up getting within another, when I didn't own up to my own wisdom and my own intelligence, was I actually was in relationships with people who were very smart to the point of being fanatical, religious fanatics, or people that were older than me and they assumed that they knew better than me, so they wanted to impose their wisdom or their worldviews onto me. So you see how this archetype plays out. And this is very much, this archetype of, obscurity, idealism, and light is very much related to our relationships. You don't have to have this on your descendant, but it will still play out as these projections, these things that you get from another person, because you're not owning up to it within yourself. And so you get the worst of it from another person. But actually, you kind of get the totality of it actually from another person. But because you're not in touch with the darker parts of the totality of something, yet you have to learn the totality of something. So you get it all within another person, a partner, or a friend, or somebody that you're really close to. So it is recommended that you trust the images that comes into your dreams. Because if you can, what ends up happening is you step into a new version of reality. You see the world differently. Your mind expands. You have a new perspective of things. But that will be discussed more in the gift of it. But, when this shadow is repressed, these sort of, we can say like unlived dreams and unlived fantasies will drain energy away from your body. It can manifest in physical health that may not be very good for you, block you from following your destiny or being on the right path of your destiny, because your destiny is always hidden behind these kinds of fantasies. And even for myself, when I repressed my love of witchcraft or astrology, because if you guys have been following, you'll know that I've been learning astrology for like 10 years, but I never did anything with it. And I would always do it in secret because I was sort of like ashamed of that, but I couldn't stop myself. I really desired it. And so again, in my relationships, these fanatical people that I was with, they hated witchcraft. Like 2 of my past exes hated astrology. One of them thought it was dark magic and witchcraft and like prevented me from doing it. Another one was sort of like tried to be interested in astrology, but had these fears of astrology again being a witchcraft because he grew up in a family where astrology was not done right and was used as witchcraft, dark magic. I love witchcraft, but I mean like really dark magic, right? So that's what happened. And the more you repress these archetypes and these visions, these images that comes to you, the more perverted and twisted they become in your mind, and the more they damage your health. We could also have the reactive shadow of obscurity here as well. And this is when you have these visions and images and fantasies coming to your mind, but you use the external world to hide from them. So you never really manifest what's in your mind, but you get caught up with something else outside of yourself. You're in an escapist life, we can say. And eventually, this type of escapist life leads to disappointment, sometimes even emotional breakdown, because you feel that life is meaningless, that everything that you're doing is just a facade of power, that it's not really coming from anything inside of yourself. So, of course, how do we turn the shadow of obscurity into the gift of idealism? Is to play with these visions and these images that are in our mind and turn them into imagination and creativity. And so Richard Rudd describes that this repression of the right brain, it's not just personal, but it's actually a collective thing. Because remember I said the right brain is associated with the feminine, and the feminine power has been suppressed in our world for a really long period of time. And so, I mean, if we think about like, you know, the fact that we used to burn witches in the past, for example, it's a symbol of the repressed wild feminine and how we wanted to repress something that we don't know. We've, you know, look at the archetype of a witch and we think that it has to be a narrow-minded, fanatical, certain way with our thoughts, and we're not open to that. And so we suppress that, right? So to play with archetypes, like I said, you need to be able to create structures for yourself to manifest your visions and your fantasies and your dreams. But first you have to find out what your true dreams, your true ideals are. And one of the ways to do that is to not identify with these archetypes too strongly. You know, if you had a dream and it was really scary and it terrified you, it's not that it is you. Some of these archetypes are in your unconscious, and they've come from past memories of your family. They've come from your ancestors. They're just repressed in there. Maybe they're just repressed part of you and your past, but they're not you. Richard Rudd describes that these archetypes move in a flow, in a fractal pattern, from the past to the present and into the future, and also vice versa. So these archetypes are always moving around us. The gene keys is an archetype. Each of the gene keys represents a particular archetype. Astrology is an archetype. You know, the different houses in astrology represent a particular archetype. Different signs represent a particular archetype. Like if I, for example, look at this notebook that I have with regards to the colors, the design, pink and gold, and so on and so forth, I can associate it with a particular archetype in astrology. Maybe I would associate it with Pisces. Maybe I would associate it with Leo because it has luxury, but it's Pisces because it's very magical and mystical. You know, everything in the world that you touch and you see can be attributed to certain archetypes, and this is not personal. Archetypes are not personal. They are what binds us as a collective. So the way that Richard Rudd describes your dreams and these visions that come to you is that they are important when it comes to the way that you feel about them. just like that dream that I had about going to the bathroom, right? What are the feelings that I have about this? What your mind is also going to do is that your mind is also playing with these visions and images that are coming. Your mind is also bringing in its own images that is based on other experiences that you have in your life. So there's a lot because that's happening in this right brain. So you must feel, it's important to know how you feel about it, but to not identify with it, because a lot of it is not personal. Some of it could be personal, but the most important thing is how you felt. You have to believe that these dreams have power, but that you must also give up what it actually looks like. That makes sense, because the way that it looks to you is the mind playing tricks and bringing images that may not be true to what your ideals are. But the way that it feels is what's most important. So I'd like to give this example, when I'm talking about this gene key, and that is the example of like having a dream about sitting around a fireplace with people, and maybe you're singing around a fireplace, right? This doesn't necessarily mean that your dream and your ideal is to go camping and to sit around a fireplace with a group of your friends. But maybe it just means that you're looking for warmth, you're looking for community, you're looking for the feeling of uniting together. And maybe there's an element of uniting together and in a place where you can create together. Maybe that's the feeling that has come up. So how you're going to put that feeling into reality is up to you. So this is that example of what I mean when I say that the images are not what's important, but what's important is how you felt. So this flow, like Richard Rudd says, is linked to the pheasant and the bird that is named after the river that flows into the Black Sea, because these archetypes, they flow from past to present to future to past to present. And so you have to allow yourself to play with the archetypes. And so like, if you have the gift of idealism, you take these archetypes and you get creative with them to make the world a better place. So, if you think about like astrology and the gene keys, you can use them in many different ways. You can use them as a way to tell people what to do in their life. You can say that because you have this and this, it's good or it's bad. And that therefore you have to take certain remedies to make your life better. Or you can take these astrological signs and zodiac signs and houses and aspects as archetypes and get creative with them in order to guide people. So maybe you write a poem, or you create art, or you make a speech, or you have a game, with the people who have certain archetypes, and allow the people who have these particular archetypes to also engage in play. Because there's not only one way to look at something. If you allow imagination and play and creativity to come in, there's boundless, endless possibilities of how you're going to use certain archetypes. It's not restricted and it's not limited. And so I think one of the reasons why I really cringe, I cringe a lot, right? When I really cringe when it comes to astrologers and astrology is when I hear or see how certain astrologers use astrology in a very limiting way. And there is a hidden agenda behind that. Usually it's because of a desire for power. But the way that I want to use astrology is I want to play with it as an archetype. I want to make art from it. I want to make videos from it in a fun way and maybe make it into entertainment so that people really are their own teacher. So that, when you're, engaged in creative work, creative archetypal work, you become your own teacher. You get to have the opportunity to interpret the archetypes in your own way. We as astrologers, and this is my ideal, is to translate these archetypes to you, and the way that it's translated to you, whether that's through my art or through my videos or through the way I entertain, it's going to be different from another astrologer out there who's going to translate this differently as well. And so you have the option of understanding it as an archetype rather than that is the way that it is. I don't know if that kind of made sense. If it doesn't make sense, I recommend that you guys go to this website. Maybe you've already went there before, the64doors.com by Bella and Ashley. They take the gene keys and they create them as archetypes. I mean, just like when you look at birds, how these birds that I've put in my videos are related to specific gene keys. It's assigning archetypes there and playing with archetypes. So I hope that kind of made sense. If you see a symbol of a snake or a rose, right? These symbols carry real power behind them. And there's going to be different ways of interpreting them. But it's going to be along the same kind of message. A snake is going to have a particular message, but there's different ways that it can be interpreted. A rose is going to have a particular message, but has different ways that it can be interpreted. The zodiac sign of Pisces has a certain message, but there's different ways within that message that it can be interpreted. So when you are engaged in this gift of idealism, what you're doing is you are allowing the world to finally find balance between the masculine and the feminine, where the feminine is coming in and gaining that equilibrium with the masculine again. And so if you are in this gift of idealism, you are truly bringing magic into the world once again. So the city of light. So I don't want to talk too long about the cities, because these are states of being where, you're not even doing anything anymore. You are just being that way. And if you get into the rhythm of the gift, you will eventually be able to reach the city. So the city of light, as Richard Rudd describes it, is when all of these images that you've been playing around with, you play with them so often and so much that they eventually become more compact and they compound into one primary archetype. This archetype can also be considered the doppelganger in Freudian psychology, and what that means is it's the dark or suppressed part of the human psyche. And when you are confronted with this, almost like he calls it like a inner demon archetype, the separate self begins to dissolve into this archetype itself. So the urge to identify with anything is purged from your psyche. And when that happens, we reach the true nature of the mind, which is emptiness, nothingness, spaciousness. So the brain becomes flooded with pure light. So how ironic that you had to bring about that inner demon in order to reach light. And so the most beautiful gift of the city of light here is that in order to really experience light, you have to be in the darkness. If you have, Richard Rudd says that to the being with the city, nobody can hide their true self. This city will shine a light on all of that. It will become quite clear who is authentic and who is simply faking. If you become if you have this archetype and you become some kind of teacher for others, which is very common for this archetype, is to become a teacher, to guide others. You have to guide others into their own darkness. That is your power here, is to be able to guide people into their darkness so that they can find light. And the pure light, and by the time that I'm coming to this point, I think you guys probably understand this by now, that the pure light of the 11th city is not about good or evil. The pure light of 11th city is not the good that has triumphed over the evil or darkness. It is the transcendence of both of those things. It's the transcendence of duality. So Richard Rudd mentions that the 11th city of light will be able to uproot the tree of knowledge of good and evil and bring forth the tree of life. And that is why this particular gene key is in a point in the sky, in the galactic center. So the galactic center is considered to be the brightest point in the sky, like astronomically. And this is exactly where 25 degrees of Sagittarius is located in the galactic center. And this gene key expands and covers the 25th degree of Sagittarius. So that's going to be it for this transmission of gene key 11, Human Design Gate 11, and this Sagittarius archetype. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you have anything you want to share about this Gene Key, leave them in the comments below. I love reading your comments. And also don't forget to check out Gene Key 12, Human Design Gate 12, which is your programming partner, the programming partner of purity and light. But purity is also the transcendence of a particular kind of duality as well. But yeah. So if you guys are interested in getting a Gene Keys reading, human design, or astrology reading, then please visit my website. We have various different services available there. You can choose what you like, either from me or from the wonderful, amazing astrologers on my team. And that's going to be it. Like I said, I am on a roll with finishing off my 64 Gene Key series for you guys. So you can expect another one coming down on the channel really soon. Sending you guys much love.